A lone black truck driver is tied to a post in the middle of nowhere by a corrupt land baron's men. They thought they were sending a message to her community, but with one phone call, they started a war they could never win. Because the woman they left for dead was the sister of the most feared man in the state. The lead thug, Jed, spat on the ground. This should keep you quiet for a while. Dandara watched him walk away, her eyes fixed on the burner phone that had fallen from her boot just inches from her feet. With a final surge of strength, she kicked her leg forward, her toe tapping the screen and dialing the only number saved in it. The man on the other end answered with a single, cold word: speak. This story shows how far a family will go for justice. If you believe in standing up against bullies, hit the like button, subscribe for more incredible stories, and comment with your city and the word justice to show your support. The sun was a merciless hammer over the cracked earth of Palmyra County, a forgotten stretch of land in the American Southwest. This was a place where power wasn't held by elected officials, but by men who owned the land and the water. For years, Dandara had been a lifeline for the small communities being squeezed out by Silas Croft, a wealthy land baron who was systematically buying up every acre and diverting the water for his own massive corporate farms. Her 16-wheeler wasn't just a truck, it was a rolling symbol of defiance, hauling essential supplies and water to families Croft was trying to starve out. But today, her run had been cut short. 2 pickup trucks had boxed her in on a desolate stretch of Highway 7. Jed and a bigger, silent man named Cutter had dragged her from her cab. They weren't interested in her cargo. They were delivering a message. "Mr. Croft has been very patient with you, Dandara," Jed had sneered, his breath smelling of cheap tobacco. "He warned you to stop meddling in his business. These are people's homes," Dandara had shot back, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. Families who were here long before Croft and his money. Her defiance only angered them. They had smashed her personal phone on the asphalt, but in the struggle, they hadn't noticed the small, cheap burner phone tucked into her steel-toed boot, a precaution for exactly this kind of situation. They dragged her to an old, splintered telephone pole 50 yards off the road and bound her wrists tightly with thick rope. "Maybe a few hours out here will make you reconsider," Cutter grunted, pulling the final knot tight enough to cut off her circulation. "The coyotes get hungry around sunset." They laughed as they got back in their trucks, kicking up a cloud of dust as they sped away, leaving her alone with the oppressive heat and the vast, empty landscape. The sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Her hope was fading. That's when she saw the phone lying in the dust. It took every ounce of her remaining energy. She twisted and strained, her muscles screaming in protest until she could finally kick it with her toe. The screen lit up, one contact. She kicked it again. The phone dialed. The line connected. "Speak," the voice on the other end said. It was deep, calm, and devoid of emotion. It was the voice of a man accustomed to control. "Dante," she whispered, her throat raw and dry. "It's me." There was a dead silence on the line. For a fraction of a second, the icy composure of the man on the other end cracked. "Dara, where are you? Talk to me." "Palmyra County," she managed to say, her vision blurring. "Highway 7, Silas Croft's men, they..." Her strength gave out, and the world went black as she slumped against the pole. On the other end of the line, in a penthouse office overlooking a gleaming city skyline hundreds of miles away, Dante stood frozen, the phone pressed to his ear. "Dara, Dara." He heard only the faint sound of the wind. He lowered the phone, his face a mask of cold fury. He turned to his impeccably dressed second-in-command, who stood waiting silently. "Cancel everything for the rest of the week," Dante said, his voice dangerously low. "Get the cars ready. We're going to Palmyra County. And bring everyone." How much blood would be spilled in the dust of Palmyra County before this debt was paid? The convoy moved like a phantom through the night. 4 black sedans with tinted windows, engines humming with a quiet power that was alien to these rural highways. Inside the lead car, Dante stared out at the passing darkness, his face illuminated only by the glow of a tablet in his hands. His second-in-command, Leo, sat in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing at the GPS. The silence in the car was heavy, absolute. It wasn't a peaceful silence, it was the coiled stillness of a predator. On the tablet was a complete dossier of Silas Croft. Financial records, property deeds, political connections, and a list of known associates. Dante absorbed every detail. Croft was old money, his family having controlled Palmyra County for generations. He was a man who believed he was above the law because in this part of the state, he was the law. He had the sheriff in his pocket and a private army of thugs masquerading as ranch hands. Dante scrolled to a picture of Jed and Cutter, flagged as Croft's primary enforcers. He committed their faces to memory. "We're about an hour out," Leo said, his voice low. "I've triangulated the call's last known position, Highway 7, mile marker 114, just like she said." Dante didn't respond. He simply swiped the tablet off, and the car plunged back into darkness. He had left his world of calculated business and high-stakes negotiations behind. He was now just a brother, and the men who had hurt his sister were about to learn what that meant. He had built an empire on a simple rule: no one touched his family. For years, he and Dandara had lived in separate worlds. She had rejected his life of crime, choosing instead to fight her own battles in her own way. He had respected her choice, always watching from a distance, an unseen guardian. But they had crossed a line. They had brought his world into hers. Meanwhile, at the sprawling Croft Ranch, Silas was enjoying a steak dinner in his lavish dining room. The walls were adorned with taxidermy heads of animals he'd hunted. Jed and Cutter sat across from him, eating greedily. "So the delivery was made?" Croft asked, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. "Yes, sir," Jed answered, his mouth full. "Left her tied to a pole off the highway. Message sent loud and clear. That little community of squatters will think twice before they refuse your next offer." Cutter nodded in agreement. "She won't be a problem anymore." Croft smiled, a thin, predatory expression. He considered Dandara a minor annoyance, a gnat to be swatted. The thought that she could be connected to anyone of consequence never even entered his mind. To him, she was just another poor, defiant local he had to crush on his path to total control. "Good. Sheriff Brolin called. Said some folks were asking questions. I told him to handle it. See that you two lay low for a few days. Don't want any unnecessary attention." "Yes, sir," they said in unison, oblivious to the storm gathering on the horizon. Back on Highway 7, the desert night had grown cold. Dandara awoke with a gasp, the rough texture of the wooden pole scratching her cheek. Her wrists were numb and raw. In the distance, she heard the yipping of coyotes. A wave of despair washed over her. Maybe the call hadn't gone through. Maybe Dante hadn't understood. Then she saw headlights. Not on the highway, but approaching slowly from a dirt access road. A beat-up old pickup truck rattled to a stop, its lights illuminating her pathetic state. For a moment, she feared it was Jed and Cutter coming back to finish the job. An old man with a weathered face and kind eyes got out. It was Samuel, one of the farmers she had been helping. He held a large pair of bolt cutters. "Dandara, my God," he whispered, rushing over to her. "Elena saw the trucks block you this afternoon. We were afraid to come sooner." Samuel worked quickly, his hands shaking as he snipped the thick ropes. Dandara collapsed into his arms, too weak to stand. He helped her into the truck and covered her with a coarse blanket. "They can't get away with this," Samuel muttered, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and anger. "They can't keep doing this to us." They drove in silence to his small, modest farmhouse. His wife, Elena, was waiting at the door. They helped Dandara inside, laying her on a couch. Elena brought water and a first aid kit, gently cleaning the deep cuts on her wrists. "Thank you," Dandara rasped, her voice hoarse. "Both of you, you're risking everything by helping me." "You've risked everything for us," Elena replied softly. "It's the least we can do." Dandara took a sip of water, the cool liquid a balm on her parched throat. "I made a call," she said, her voice a little stronger. "My brother, he's coming." Samuel and Elena exchanged a worried glance. They assumed she meant he was coming to file a police report or talk to a lawyer, futile gestures in a county owned by Silas Croft. They had no idea that the help on its way wasn't coming to talk. It was coming to end a war. Miles away, the 4 black sedans turned off the main highway, their tires now chewing up the same dirt roads that led to the heart of Palmyra County. Dante was no longer looking at a map. He didn't need one. He was following an instinct, a cold, burning rage that was pulling him directly toward the man who had dared to harm his sister. The convoy of black sedans came to a halt at mile marker 114. The spot was desolate, marked only by the discarded cut ropes lying in the dust near the telephone pole and the glittering shards of Dandara's smashed phone. Dante stepped out of his car, the city polish of his expensive shoes instantly dulled by the fine, pale dirt. He walked to the pole, his men fanning out silently, securing the perimeter. He picked up a piece of the rope. It was coarse, thick, meant to inflict pain. His jaw tightened. "Leo," he said without turning around. "The burner phone. Where is it now?" Leo was already tapping on a ruggedized laptop in the passenger seat of the lead car. A satellite map appeared on the screen. A single blinking dot pulsed a few miles away. "It's stationary. Looks like a small farmstead off County Road 4. About a 10-minute drive." "Let's go," Dante commanded, dropping the rope. He got back in the car, his expression unreadable, but radiating a cold, focused energy that made the air around him feel 10 degrees colder. The sight of 4 immaculate black sedans rolling up their dirt driveway sent a jolt of terror through Samuel and Elena. Samuel grabbed an old shotgun from behind the door, his hands trembling. He thought Croft had sent men to finish the job and silence them all. "Stay back, Elena," he whispered as the lead car stopped. The door opened and Dante emerged. He was not what Samuel expected. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that seemed absurdly out of place, and he moved with an unnerving calm. He walked to the flimsy screen door of the farmhouse and stopped, his hands empty and visible at his sides. "I'm looking for my sister," Dante said, his voice level and clear, carrying easily through the door. "Her name is Dandara." Inside, Dandara, who had been resting on the couch, heard his voice. Her eyes shot open. "Dante," she called out, her voice weak but firm. "Samuel, it's okay. He's my brother." Samuel hesitated, then slowly lowered the shotgun. He unlatched the door. Dante's eyes swept past him, landing on Dandara. He walked inside, his gaze taking in her bandaged wrists, the exhaustion on her face, the way she flinched when she tried to sit up. The mask of calm control he wore in his world finally cracked just for a second, revealing the raw fury beneath. He knelt beside the couch. "Who did this to you?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "2 of Croft's men," Dandara said, meeting his gaze. "They call themselves Jed and Cutter." Dante nodded slowly, the names locking into place in his mind like tumblers in a vault. He stood up and turned to Samuel and Eleanor, who were huddled by the kitchen counter, watching with wide, fearful eyes. He reached into his jacket, and for a terrifying moment they thought he was pulling out a weapon. Instead, he produced a thick envelope of cash. "For your trouble," he said, placing it on the counter, "and for your courage. No one will bother you again. I give you my word." The amount of money in the envelope was more than they made in 5 years. Leo and 2 other men entered the house. "We need a place to work," Dante said, not to Samuel, but as a statement of fact. "Someplace local." "There's the old Stardust Motel on the edge of town," Samuel offered, his voice barely a whisper. "It's mostly empty." "Leo, go and buy the Stardust Motel," Dante ordered. "Pay the owner double what it's worth." In cash. Tell him he's on a paid vacation starting tonight. I want it empty and secure in 1 hour." Leo nodded and left without a word. Dante turned back to Dandara. "You need a doctor." "I'm fine," she insisted. "Dante, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to handle it," he said, the finality in his tone leaving no room for argument. He was taking over now. Her fight had become his. Less than an hour later, the Stardust Motel was under new management. The bewildered former owner was on his way out of the county with a suitcase full of money. Dante's men had turned the manager's office into a command center. Laptops glowed, encrypted satellite phones were set out, and maps of the county were pinned to the walls. Leo stood before Dante. Jedediah, Jed Morris, and Franklin Cutter. Vance. Both have long records, mostly assault charges that were dropped. They frequent a bar on the outskirts of town called the Rusty Spur. According to their credit card activity, they were there an hour ago. Dante looked at the pictures of the two men on Leo's screen. The same men from the dossier. The same men who had laughed as they left his sister tied to a pole. He looked at two of his best men, hulking figures who had been with him for years. "Find them," Dante said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Bring them to me. I want to have a conversation with them." He paused, his eyes like chips of ice. "Don't damage them too much on the way." The Rusty Spur was a dive bar that smelled of stale beer and desperation. Pool balls clacked in the background under a flickering neon sign. Jed and Cutter were at a corner table laughing loudly over a pitcher of cheap beer, feeling invincible. They were celebrating a job well done, confident in the protective bubble of Silas Croft's power. They never noticed the two men in dark suits who entered the bar until they were standing over their table. Jedediah Morris, Franklin Vance. The first man, Marco, asked. His voice was calm, a stark contrast to the bar's rowdy atmosphere. Jed looked up, annoyed. "Who's asking?" "Doesn't matter," the second man, Victor, said. Before Jed could react, Victor's hand shot out, grabbing him by the throat and lifting him partially from his chair. Cutter tried to stand, but Marco moved with impossible speed, driving an elbow into his solar plexus. The air rushed out of Cutter's lungs, and he collapsed back into his seat, gasping. The entire bar went silent. The bartender reached for a phone under the counter. "I wouldn't do that," Victor said, his eyes never leaving Jed's. "We're just here to collect our friends. We'll be on our way." They dragged the two thugs out of the bar as if they weighed nothing. The patrons watched in stunned silence, a collective understanding passing through the room. These were not men to be trifled with. The bubble of Croft's protection had just been violently popped. Back at the Stardust Motel, Dandara was pacing in her room. One of Dante's men stood guard outside her door, a silent, imposing sentinel. She felt like a prisoner. She had been given clean clothes, food and medical attention from a doctor brought in from 2 towns over, but she couldn't rest. This wasn't how she fought her battles. She fought with community organizing, with legal challenges, with the stubborn refusal to be erased. Dante fought with overwhelming force. She opened her door. The guard didn't move, but his eyes followed her as she walked to the command center. Dante was standing over a map of the county. He looked up as she entered. "This is too much, Dante," she said, her voice strained. "Buying a motel, men with guns. This isn't justice, it's an invasion." "They tied you to a post and left you to die," Dante replied, his voice dangerously soft. "They declared war. I'm just giving them the war they asked for. I wanted to expose Croft, to beat him legally," she argued, "not to start a gang war in the middle of these people's lives. The law here belongs to him, the sheriff, the judges. My people confirmed it within an hour of our arrival. There is no legal path for people like you in a place like this," Dante stated, his words cold and hard as stone. "You tried it your way. Now we do it my way." Before she could reply, Marco and Victor entered, pushing Jed and Cutter, now bound with zip ties, into the room. They threw them onto the floor. Jed's bravado was gone, replaced by pure terror. Cutter just stared at the floor, defeated. Dante gestured for his men to take Dandara back to her room. She resisted for a moment, then saw the look in her brother's eyes and knew there was nothing she could say. The door closed behind her. Dante pulled up a chair and sat in front of the two men. "I'm going to ask you some questions. You're going to give me answers. It's very simple." He leaned forward. "Who else is on Croft's enforcement payroll?" Jed spat on the floor. "Go to hell." Dante sighed. He didn't raise his voice. He simply reached down, took Jed's left hand, and with a quick, brutal twist broke his index finger. Jed screamed, a raw, piercing sound. Cutter flinched violently. "Let's try again," Dante said calmly. "Names, locations, schedules, everything." Through gritted teeth and tears of pain, Jed started talking. He gave up every name, every illegal dump site, every backroom deal he'd ever heard about. Cutter filled in the gaps, his voice trembling. They had been talking for 20 minutes when the red and blue lights of a patrol car flashed outside. Sheriff Brolin, a large man with a gut hanging over his belt, stepped out of his car and swaggered toward the office. Leo met him at the door. "Private property, Sheriff," Leo said politely. "I got a call about a disturbance at the Rusty Spur. Witnesses described your men," Brolin said, trying to peer past Leo. "I'm gonna need to have a look around." Dante emerged from the back room, wiping his hands with a cloth. "Sheriff Brolin, a pleasure. I'm the new owner." Brolin was taken aback. "New owner? Since when?" "Since about 2 hours ago," Dante said with a thin smile. "And there's no disturbance here. Just a business meeting." I have probable cause to search the premises," Brolin blustered, his hand resting on his sidearm. "Do you?" Dante asked, his smile vanishing. "Or did Silas Croft tell you to come down here and see what's going on? Let me save you the trouble of a report. You can tell him that his message was received, and now he's about to receive mine. You can also tell him that I know all about the monthly payments he makes to your pension fund from his agricultural subsidiary. It would be a shame if the IRS found out about that undeclared income." The color drained from Sheriff Brolin's face. He was speechless. He stared at Dante, realizing he wasn't dealing with some local troublemaker. This was something else entirely. He slowly backed away, got in his car, and sped off, kicking up a cloud of dust. The first shot had been fired, and now the enemy knew exactly who was holding the gun. Sheriff Brolin drove with a lead foot, his patrol car fishtailing on the dirt road leading to the Croft Ranch. He didn't bother with the main gate, using his remote to open a private entrance. He found Silas Croft on the veranda, smoking a cigar and looking up at the stars as if he owned them too. "We have a problem," Brolin said, his voice breathless as he stomped up the wooden steps. Croft turned slowly, an amused look on his face. "Calm down, Brolin. You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse! The men from the bar, they're at the Stardust. They bought it. Their leader he knew about the payments, Silas. He knew everything." Croft's smile faded. He took a long drag from his cigar, the tip glowing red in the darkness. He had built his empire on the assumption of absolute control. Fear was his primary tool, and for the first time, someone had shown no fear of him. Worse, they had turned that tool back on his sheriff. "So, the trucker girl has a brother with some money," Croft mused, his voice hardening. "Some city gangster thinks he can come into my county and throw his weight around. He's mistaken." He turned to Brolin, his eyes cold and sharp. "Get off my property. Go home and stay there. If I need you, I'll call you. This is no longer a matter for the law." As Brolin scurried away, Croft pulled out his phone. He made one call. "Round up everyone," he said into the phone. "All the hands. Tell them there's a bonus. We have some pests to exterminate at the Stardust Motel." Back at the motel, the atmosphere was tense. Jed and Cutter, gagged and bound, had been loaded into the trunk of one of the sedans. They were no longer of any use. "What's the plan?" Leo asked Dante, who was studying the county map again. On it, he had marked every asset belonging to Croft, information pulled from the interrogation and cross-referenced with his own data. "He thinks this is about muscle," Dante said, tapping a location on the map. He's going to send his thugs here. A direct assault. It's predictable. But we're not going to fight him on his terms. We're not going to fight him at all. We're going to bankrupt him. He pointed to a spot marked Pumping Station Alpha. This is the heart of his operation. It's a massive, illegally constructed station that diverts nearly 70% of the Palmyra River to his corporate farms, leaving only a trickle for the rest of the valley. Without it, his crops wither in a week. The door opened, and Dandara walked in. She had been listening from her room. She looked at the map and then at her brother. The conflict in her eyes was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. "You're right," she said, her voice clear and strong. "That's his heart. But his men will be guarding it. We'll handle them," Dante said dismissively. "You don't have to," she countered, stepping closer to the map. "Croft's men use the main access road. It's wide, open. They'll see you coming from a mile away. But there's another way." She traced a thin, forgotten line on the map with her finger. "This is an old service road for the original irrigation ditch. It's overgrown, barely passable, but it comes up behind the station, on the blind side. I used to play there as a kid. I can guide your men." Dante looked at his sister. He saw the same fire, the same intelligence, but now it was forged with a pragmatism that matched his own. She understood what needed to be done. He had come to avenge her, but he was realizing she was a weapon in her own right. He nodded once. "Leo, take Marco and Victor. Dandara will show you the way. Your objective is the station's main control hub and the backup generators. I don't want it damaged. I want it turned off. Take the master controls. We're not destroying his water supply. We're taking it." As Leo's team prepared to leave, a convoy of pickup trucks filled with armed ranch hands could be seen gathering dust in the distance, heading for the motel. "They're here," one of Dante's men reported. "Let them come," Dante said, not even bothering to look outside. He walked to a satellite phone and dialed a number. "It's done. Start the acquisition." Miles away, at Pumping Station Alpha, Leo, Marco and Victor moved like ghosts through the brush, guided by Dandara's precise directions. They neutralized the two lazy guards with silent efficiency. Inside, they found the main control panel. With a series of keystrokes and the flick of 3 large breakers, the deafening roar of the massive pumps died, replaced by an eerie silence. The river's flow was no longer being diverted. At the Croft Ranch, Silas stood on his veranda listening to the radio chatter from his men as they surrounded the Stardust Motel, ready to attack. He felt the familiar surge of power. Then a strange quiet settled over the land. The constant low hum from his fields, the sound of water being pumped through miles of irrigation pipes, the sound of his money growing. It stopped. The silence was absolute and terrifying. He looked out at his vast green empire, and for the first time, he felt a cold knot of genuine fear. The war had just begun, and he had already lost the most important battle. The silence from the fields was deafening. Silas Croft's phone rang, and he answered it with a snarl. "What is it?" "Boss, the pumps are down!" The frantic voice of his ranch foreman crackled on the line. "Not just one, all of them. The whole grid is dark. We checked the breakers, the generators. Nothing. It's like someone just flipped a switch we don't know about." Croft's knuckles turned white as he gripped the veranda railing. He understood immediately. This wasn't a malfunction. It was a surgical strike. The city gangster wasn't playing by the rules of rural thuggery. He was playing chess, and he had just taken Croft's queen. "Pull everyone back from the motel," Croft commanded, his voice shaking with a rage he hadn't felt in decades. "Get them to the pumping station. Now, find out who did this and bring them to me." "They're gone, boss," the foreman said. "The guards are tied up, but they didn't see a thing. Whoever it was, they came and went like smoke." Croft slammed the phone down, shattering the screen. He was trapped. His army was useless if they were guarding the wrong target. His entire agricultural empire, millions of dollars of crops, was now on a countdown to death under the relentless sun. Outside the Stardust Motel, Croft's men received the frantic call to pull back. They looked at each other in confusion, their planned assault dissolving into a chaotic retreat. Inside the motel office, Dante watched them go on a security monitor his men had set up. He hadn't even bothered to draw a weapon. A moment later, Leo and his team returned, Dandara with them. Leo placed a small, complex-looking circuit board on the table in front of Dante. "The master control module for the entire irrigation grid," Leo reported. "Without this, he can't restart the pumps, even if he gets the power back on." Dandara watched, a strange mix of horror and vindication on her face. In a single night, her brother had done more to cripple Silas Croft than she had managed in 2 years of protests and petitions. He hadn't just punched the bully, he had seized control of the bully's entire nervous system. "What now?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Now, we wait for the sun to do its work," Dante said, "and we make our next move." He turned to Leo. "The call I made earlier, what's the status?" "The Shell Corporation is active," Leo replied. "Funds are in place. We're ready to begin purchasing the debt." Dante nodded. This was the second phase of his plan. Silas Croft wasn't just a land baron. He was a man deeply in debt. His lavish lifestyle and aggressive expansion were financed by massive loans, all secured against the projected value of his harvests. With no water, there would be no harvest. With no harvest, the loans would default. The next morning, the sun rose on a changed Palmyra County. Down by the river, the water level was already visibly higher. For the first time in years, the stream that ran past Samuel and Elena's farm was flowing with more than a trickle. Farmers who had been on the brink of ruin came out of their homes, staring in disbelief at the life-giving water returning to the dry creek beds. Word spread like wildfire. Something had happened. The giant had stumbled. At the Croft Ranch, panic was setting in. By noon, the leaves on thousands of acres of lucrative crops had begun to wilt. Financial advisors were calling Croft with increasing urgency. His investors were getting nervous. Croft, however, was not a man to be cornered easily. He was a creature of brute force. If he couldn't win with strategy, he would win with violence. He called a meeting with his most loyal and most ruthless men. "Forget the pumps," he snarled, pacing in his office. "We're going after the source. This man, Dante, and his sister. I want them. I don't care how you do it. Bring them to me. The rest of their crew, you can bury them in the desert." Meanwhile, Dandara was doing what she did best. She took one of Dante's sedans, a jarring sight in the poor farming community, and drove to Samuel's farm. She found him and a dozen other farmers gathered by the newly flowing creek, their faces a mixture of hope and fear. "Dandara, what's happening?" Elena asked. "Is this your brother?" "He's helping," Dandara said carefully. "Croft's water has been shut off. For now, the river belongs to everyone again." A cheer went through the small crowd, but it was hesitant. They had lived under Croft's thumb for too long. "But he won't let this stand," Samuel said, voicing the fear of everyone. "He will retaliate. He'll come after you, and then he'll come after us." "That's why you all need to be ready," Dandara said, her voice ringing with the authority they were used to hearing from her. "My brother is dealing with Croft on his level, but we need to be ready on ours. We need to document everything. The water levels, the state of your land. We need to organize. When Croft falls, and he will fall, we have to be ready to reclaim our water rights legally and permanently." She was bridging the gap between Dante's world and hers. He was tearing down the old power structure with force and cunning. She was building the new one from the ground up with community and law. The siblings, once separated by their methods, were now two sides of the same vengeful blade. The real war for Palmyra County wasn't just about destroying Silas Croft. It was about what would rise from his ashes. The second day without water was worse. From the veranda of his ranch, Silas Croft could see the faint green of his fields turning a sickly yellow-brown at the edges. It was a visible representation of his power bleeding away. His phone had not stopped ringing. Bankers, investors, distributors, all asking the same question in different ways. What was happening to the harvest? Every call chipped away at the foundation of his empire. Inside the Stardust Motel, the atmosphere was the opposite of panic. It was a state of coiled, patient readiness. Leo approached Dante, who was looking at a live satellite feed of the Croft Ranch on a laptop. "The financial attack is working faster than we projected," Leo said, his tone clipped and professional. "His creditors are in a panic. We've acquired 40% of his agricultural debt through our holding company for pennies on the dollar. By tomorrow, we'll be his primary lien holder. He's losing the ranch, and he doesn't even know we're the ones taking it." "He knows he's losing," Dante corrected, not taking his eyes off the screen. "A cornered animal doesn't care about debt. It only thinks about survival. He'll lash out." "What's his muscle doing?" "They're gathering," Leo confirmed, pointing to another screen showing thermal imaging of a large, disused warehouse on the other side of the county. "About 15 men, maybe 20. They're loading weapons into their trucks. They're not ranch hands anymore. They're an army. They'll hit us here, likely just after dusk." Before Dante could issue a command, a new vehicle appeared on their perimeter cameras. It was Samuel's old pickup truck, rattling down the road. The guard at the makeshift checkpoint spoke into his radio, then waved the truck through. Samuel parked and got out, his face set with a grim determination that hadn't been there 2 days ago. Dandara met him at the door. "Samuel, what is it? It's not safe for you to be here." "Croft's men are getting ready at the old miller's warehouse," Samuel said, ignoring the danger. "My cousin works at the gas station nearby. He saw them all pulling in. They're loading rifles. They think no one knows about that place. They're planning to attack you tonight." Dandara led him into the command center. Samuel stopped short, his eyes wide at the display of technology and armed men. He looked at Dante, the man who had brought this storm to their valley. Dante turned his full attention to the old farmer. "You're sure of this?" "I've lived here my whole life," Samuel said, his voice steady. "I know what I saw. I know what it means." This was his growth, his moment of overcoming decades of fear. He was no longer just a victim. He was a source of intelligence, an active participant in the fight. Dandara looked at her brother. "Local knowledge beats satellite images, Dante." "He's right." Dante studied Samuel for a long moment, then gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He respected courage, and the old farmer was showing it in spades. He turned to his men. "They want to bring the fight to us. We'll take it to them first. Leo, Marco, Victor, you're with me. The rest of you stay here, fortify this position, protect my sister." There was no grand battle plan. There didn't need to be. Croft's men were amateurs, fueled by bonuses and bravado. Dante's men were professionals, fueled by loyalty and a singular purpose. 2 of the black sedans left the Stardust Motel, heading not towards the warehouse, but away from it, a deliberate feint. A third vehicle, a nondescript cargo van that had been delivered earlier that day, exited from a rear service road, Dante and his team inside. They drove through the back roads of the county, the roads Dandara knew so well, arriving at a position a quarter-mile from the warehouse, undetected. Through binoculars, Dante watched as Croft's men prepared, laughing and joking, passing bottles of whiskey between them. They were confident, sloppy. They had posted no lookouts. "They expect a siege," Dante murmured. "We'll give them a whisper." Under the cover of the setting sun, Dante's team moved in. They didn't storm the building. They disabled the ignition systems on every pickup truck in the lot with practiced efficiency. They blocked the only exit with their heavy van. Then, as darkness fell, 2 canisters were rolled through a broken window into the warehouse. They hissed, releasing a thick, disorienting tear gas. Chaos erupted inside. Men started coughing, choking, stumbling blindly towards the doors, only to find them blocked. When they finally burst out the main entrance, gasping for air, they were met not with gunfire, but with the silent, brutal efficiency of Dante's men. It wasn't a fight. It was a dismantling. In less than 5 minutes, Croft's entire private army was lying on the ground, zip-tied and incapacitated. Dante walked among them, his face impassive. He took a radio from the belt of the lead thug. He keyed the mic. "Silas," he said, his voice calm and clear over the channel. "This is Dante. Your men won't be coming. Your water is gone. Your money is gone. Your army is gone. It's just you and me now. I'm coming to your house. I suggest you be there." He dropped the radio on the ground and crushed it under his heel. He had stripped Silas Croft of everything. All that was left was the final personal act of vengeance. The crushed radio on the dusty ground of the warehouse lot was the only sound for a long moment. Dante turned to Leo. "Call Sheriff Brolin. Tell him there's been a report of an illegal weapons cache and an armed militia gathering at this address. He can have the credit for the biggest bust in county history. All he has to do is show up and collect them." Leo nodded, understanding the move. It wasn't about justice. It was about tying up loose ends and neutralizing Croft's last pawn. Brolin, faced with a choice between loyalty to a falling king and his own career, would choose self-preservation. It was a clean, elegant checkmate. As Dante's team drove away, leaving Croft's army trussed up for the local police, a different kind of preparation was underway at the Stardust Motel. Dandara stood in the command center, the map of the county spread before her, but she wasn't looking at Croft's assets anymore. She was circling the small farms, the independent ranches, the communities that had been suffering for years. When Dante walked in, she looked up, her expression serious. "They're gone. His men. They're being processed," Dante said simply. He started to unbutton his suit jacket, preparing for the final confrontation. "Before you go to the ranch," Dandara said, stopping him, "there's one more thing. You've broken his power, but what comes next is just as important. These people," she gestured to the map, "they're terrified, but they're also hopeful for the first time in a generation. Your way has worked, Dante, but it can't be the way forward for Palmyra." He looked at her, his face unreadable. "What are you suggesting?" "You're about to own this entire valley," she stated. "Through your company, you'll hold all of Croft's debt. You'll own his land, his equipment, his water rights, and I will give them back to you," he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. The simplicity of his statement stunned her. "What? I didn't come here to become a land baron, Dara," he said, his voice softening for the first time. "I came here for you. This is your fight. I'm just providing the tools. When this is over, the holding company will be transferred to a new community trust. You will run it. You and Samuel and the other farmers. You can redistribute the water rights fairly. You can sell off Croft's excess land to the families he squeezed out. You can build the future you were fighting for." Tears welled in Dandara's eyes. For years, she had seen her brother as a man lost to a world of violence and shadows, but in that moment, she saw the boy she grew up with, the fiercely protective older brother who had always stood between her and the world. His methods were brutal, but his motive was pure. Family. "Go," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Finish it." The drive to the Croft Ranch was silent. The single black sedan moved up the long, winding driveway, passing fields of dying crops, a testament to Dante's victory. The house, a sprawling monument to ego and stolen wealth, was dark except for a single light burning in the main office. Dante told Leo to wait in the car. He was going in alone. The massive front doors were unlocked. He walked through the opulent, silent halls, the taxidermy heads on the walls, watching him like glassy-eyed ghosts. He found Silas Croft in his office, sitting behind a massive oak desk. A half-empty bottle of expensive whiskey and a single glass were on the desk. Next to them lay a large, antique revolver. Croft looked old, smaller than Dante had imagined. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had lost everything. "I should have known," Croft said, his voice a dry rasp. "When Brolin came back babbling about you, I thought you were just some thug with a lucky streak. But this was methodical." He poured himself another drink, his hand trembling slightly. "You've ruined me." "You ruined yourself," Dante replied, his voice a low, even tone. He remained standing, a pillar of dark judgment in the center of the room. "You got greedy. You got cruel. You hurt people who couldn't fight back. And then you made the mistake of hurting my sister." Croft let out a bitter laugh. "Your sister, the truck driver. All of this for her?" The concept was so alien to his world of calculated self-interest that he couldn't comprehend it. "All of this for her," Dante confirmed. "You thought you were untouchable. You built a kingdom in the dirt and called yourself a king, but kings can be toppled." Croft stared at Dante, his eyes filled with a dawning, terrible understanding. He wasn't just facing a rival, he was facing a force of nature, a reckoning he had brought upon himself. He looked down at the revolver on his desk. His empire was gone. His army was gone. His future was gone. All he had left was one final, desperate choice. He slowly reached his hand towards the gun. The climax of their conflict was no longer a question of if, but of how it would end. Dante didn't move as Croft's trembling fingers wrapped around the grip of the revolver. He watched, his expression unchanged, his posture relaxed. There was no fear in him, only a final, cold certainty. "You think you can just walk in here and take everything my family built over 100 years? Croft snarled, the gun now in his hand. He didn't raise it, not yet. It was a final, pathetic display of the power he once held. "Your family built nothing," Dante said, his voice cutting through the tension. They took land from poor farmers. They took water from the river. They took the law and twisted it to serve them. You didn't build an empire, Silas. You were just the last in a long line of thieves." Every word was a hammer blow to Croft's shattered pride. He had always seen himself as a titan, a man of legacy. To be called a common thief by this stranger, this man who had undone him in less than 3 days, was the final indignity. "I am this county," Croft whispered, his voice cracking. "You were," Dante corrected. "Not anymore." With a roar of pure rage, Croft raised the revolver. He was clumsy, his hands slick with sweat and whiskey. But before he could aim, Dante moved. He wasn't just fast, he was a blur of controlled violence. He crossed the room in 2 long strides, his hand shooting out to grab Croft's wrist. He twisted, not with the brutal force he'd used on Jed, but with a precise, disarming pressure. The bones in Croft's wrist grated against each other, and he cried out, the gun clattering onto the oak desk. Dante kicked the chair out from under him. Croft collapsed to the floor, landing in a heap at Dante's feet. He was no longer a king in his castle. He was just a broken old man on the floor of an empty house. Dante picked up the revolver. He checked the cylinder. It was fully loaded. He placed it back on the desk, just out of Croft's reach. "This is not how you die," Dante said, looking down at the pathetic figure. "That would be too easy. A quick end is a mercy, and you don't deserve mercy." He turned and walked to the large window that overlooked the dying fields. "Your real punishment is already happening. You're going to live. You're going to stay right here in this house that you no longer own, on this land that is no longer yours. You're going to watch from this window as the fields turn to dust. You're going to watch the bank foreclose on everything your family ever stole. And then you're going to watch the people you terrorized start to rebuild." He turned back to face Croft. "You're going to watch my sister, the truck driver you left for dead, lead them. She's going to give them back their water. She's going to give them back their land. She's going to give them back their future. You're not going to die, Silas. You're going to become a ghost, a forgotten relic in a valley that has healed itself from the poison of your family. That is your punishment, to be alive and to be irrelevant." Croft stared up at him, his face a mask of disbelief and horror, annihilation he could have understood. But this slow, living death, this sentence of absolute obscurity, was a torture his mind could barely comprehend. Dante walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the knob, and looked back one last time. "Oh, and Jed and Cutter. They've started talking to the federal marshals about your various business practices. Seems they'd rather face a few years in a federal prison than spend another minute in a room with me. I suspect the IRS will have some questions for you as well. Enjoy your retirement." He stepped out of the office and closed the door, leaving Silas Croft alone in the darkness, with his whiskey, his useless gun, and the crushing weight of his complete and utter defeat. The war was over. The vengeance was complete, not with a bang, but with the silent, soul-crushing turning of the tables. Justice, in its purest and most brutal form, had been served. As Dante walked out into the cool desert night, he could already hear the distant, hopeful sound of the river flowing freely. Dante got into the back of the sedan without a word. Leo was behind the wheel, and he put the car in gear, pulling away from the grand house slowly, respectfully, like a hearse leaving a funeral. The job was done. The vengeance was not just delivered, it was a masterpiece of psychological destruction. But inside the silent office, something was happening that Dante hadn't accounted for. The silence was a physical weight, pressing down on Silas Croft. Dante's words echoed in his ears. Ghost, irrelevant, forgotten. He saw a future of empty days, watching from his window as his legacy was dismantled and given to his enemies. He would be a prisoner in his own home, forced to witness the triumph of the woman he'd tried to crush. The humiliation was a poison more potent than any bullet. It burned through the whiskey haze, through the decades of arrogance, and found the raw, primal core of the man. And that core was not built for irrelevance, it was built for violence. A guttural sound escaped his lips, a mix of a sob and a snarl. His eyes, wild and bloodshot, fixed on the antique revolver still sitting on the edge of the desk. Dante had made one mistake. He had assumed the man he broke would stay broken. With a surge of adrenaline, Croft scrambled to his feet. He lunged for the desk, his fingers closing around the heavy gun. He didn't think. He only acted. He burst through the French doors onto the veranda, the night air cool on his sweat-soaked skin. The black sedan was halfway down the long driveway, its taillights like two receding red eyes. It was too far for a clean shot, especially for a man shaking with rage and alcohol, but he didn't care. If he was to be erased, he would take his destroyer with him. He raised the heavy revolver with both hands, trying to steady his aim on the rear window of the car. Inside the sedan, Leo glanced in the rearview mirror. His eyes widened. "Boss! Gun!" he yelled, slamming his foot on the accelerator. The car lurched forward. Dante didn't even have time to react. He was turning to look back when a different sound split the night. Not the heavy boom of Croft's revolver, but a sharper, higher-pitched crack. It came from their right, from the side of the road near a thicket of mesquite trees. On the veranda, a small, dark hole appeared in the center of Silas Croft's chest. His eyes went wide with shock, not at the pain, but at the sheer surprise. He looked down at the red stains spreading across his shirt, then his arms went limp. The revolver fell from his grasp, hit the stone with a loud clatter, and discharged with a deafening roar, the wild shot burying itself harmlessly in the dirt. Croft crumpled to the ground, his reign over Palmyra County ending not with a king's last stand, but with a final, pathetic collapse. The sedan screeched to a halt. Dante threw his door open, his eyes scanning the darkness, not at the house, but at the source of the shot. Another car, a dusty sedan from the motel's fleet, was parked half-hidden in the trees. The driver's side door was open, and standing beside it, illuminated by the interior light, was Dandara. In her hand, she held a small, smoking pistol. Dante stared at her, momentarily speechless. Leo was already out of the car, his own weapon drawn, securing the scene. Dandara didn't look shaken. Her face was a mask of cold, hard resolve. Her hand holding the gun did not tremble. She had followed them. She couldn't let Dante face him alone. She had waited, watched, and when she saw Croft emerge with the gun, she had acted. Dante walked towards her, his mind racing. "Dara, he would have killed you," she said, her voice low and steady. It wasn't an excuse, it was a statement of fact. "You were right. Some things can't be fixed with words or protests. Some things just have to be ended." In the distance, the faint sound of sirens began to grow. Sheriff Brolin and his deputies on their way to the warehouse were being diverted. Leo jogged over. "Dante, We need to go. Now." Dante looked from the body on the veranda to his sister. He took the pistol from her unresisting hand and put it in his jacket. He guided her to his car. "Get in," he turned to Leo. "Wipe her car down. Get it back to the motel." As they sped away into the night, leaving the chaos for the authorities to find, Dandara looked back at the ranch. The single light in the office was still on, illuminating the empty stage where a tyrant had just met his final curtain call, brought down not by the feared mafia boss, but by the determined truck driver he had so foolishly underestimated. 6 months later, the sun over Palmyra County felt different. It was still hot, still relentless, but it was no longer an enemy. It was a partner. The fields that had turned to brown dust under Croft's neglect were now divided into smaller, manageable plots. Green shoots of corn, beans and alfalfa pushed through the dark, irrigated soil. The river flowed full and steady, its banks teeming with new life. The official story, as reported by the regional news, was a dramatic one. Silas Croft, facing financial ruin and a sweeping federal investigation into decades of corruption, had taken his own life. The antique revolver, which had discharged wildly upon falling, was found by his side. Sheriff Brolin, hailed as a hero for dismantling Croft's armed militia, quietly resigned a month later, citing health reasons, and moved to another state. The power vacuum was filled not with chaos, but with quiet, determined work. Dandara stood on a small hill overlooking the valley. The Stardust Motel was gone, demolished and replaced by the new headquarters of the Palmyra Valley Community Trust. She was no longer just a truck driver. She was the executive director. Her days were filled with meetings, paperwork, and the endless complexities of managing water rights, but she had never felt more alive. Samuel was the chairman of the board, his weathered hands now signing off on land grants instead of gripping a shotgun. Her 16-wheeler was parked nearby. She still made runs, but now she hauled equipment for the new farms or took their produce to market. Her truck once again a symbol not of defiance, but of prosperity. A sleek black car, looking just as out of place as it had 6 months ago, pulled up beside her. Dante stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit, but a simple black shirt and jeans. He looked more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Everything's running smoothly?" he asked, his eyes sweeping over the transformed landscape. "We have our challenges," she said with a small smile. "Running a democracy is messier than running a criminal empire." He returned the smile, a rare and genuine expression. "But it's yours." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the bond between them reforged in the crucible of vengeance and justice. They had walked through the fire together and had come out the other side, changed but whole. He had torn down the old world so she could build the new one. "Are you staying?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "My world is back in the city," he said. "Yours is here, but I'm only ever a phone call away." He handed her a small new burner phone, identical to the one that had started it all. One contact. She took it, their fingers brushing. "Thank you, Dante, for everything." "You would have done the same for me," he said. It was the highest praise he could give. He got back in his car, and as he drove away, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew his sister was safe. He knew she was strong. He knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Dandara watched until his car was a speck on the horizon. She looked at the phone in her hand, then out at the valley that was now hers to protect. Her fight had started with an act of brutal violence against her, and it had ended with an act of brutal violence from her. She had crossed a line she never thought she would, but she felt no regret. She had done what was necessary to protect her brother, to protect her community, to protect their future. The dust of Palmyra County had been settled with blood and iron, but from that hard ground, something new and beautiful was finally beginning to grow. Justice had a price, and she, along with her brother, had paid it in full. And so, the reign of a tyrant ends, not with a whimper, but with a final, definitive crack of thunder. The story of Dandara and Dante is a powerful lesson in the duality of justice. It shows us that there are two kinds of strength needed to change the world: the patient, enduring strength of the builder, and the swift, absolute strength of the destroyer. One without the other is often not enough. Dandara was the water, tirelessly working to erode the stone of corruption over years. Dante was the earthquake, shattering the foundation in a single, violent night. Both were essential to bring down the mountain that was Silas Croft. Their story is a powerful reminder that the bonds of family are not just about blood. They are a sacred promise, an unbreakable vow to show up when the rest of the world has turned its back. It was a single, desperate phone call from a woman left for dead that unraveled a century of corruption. It proves that no bully, no matter how rich or powerful, is truly invincible when they finally cross a line and awaken a force they cannot comprehend. The unwavering loyalty of a family that will stop at nothing to protect its own. But this brings us to the most difficult question of all. What do you think about that final, shocking moment? Dandara, the community activist who fought with petitions and protests, was the one to pull the trigger. Was this a betrayal of her principles, a descent into the very violence she fought against? Or was it the ultimate act of pragmatism, the final, necessary step to secure the peace her brother had won for her people? Sometimes, to protect the flock, the shepherd must eliminate the wolf for good. She did what was necessary to protect her brother's life and ensure that the ghost of Silas Croft would never rise again. Justice was served, but it came at a profound cost. Let us know in the comments what you would have done in her position. This story was a testament to the courage it takes to stand up for what is right, especially when you feel small and the enemy seems impossibly large. It's for every person who has ever felt powerless, who has ever wished for a powerful ally to step in and balance the scales. If this story of family, vengeance, and hard-won justice resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. We are dedicated to bringing you more incredible narratives that will inspire you and keep you on the edge of your seat. We pour our hearts and souls into crafting these stories, and knowing that you're with us until the very last word means everything. To show your support and let us know you're a true member of our storyteller community, please do us a huge favor and comment down below with the words, "I watched until the end." When you do that, you send a powerful signal that this content matters, helping us reach more people who need to hear these messages of hope, resilience, and justice. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey with us today. But the stories don't stop here. We have another tale of righteous payback that we think you'll love. What happens when a humble, elderly librarian is evicted from her home by a ruthless developer, only for him to discover that the small community library she ran holds the only map to his family's immense hidden fortune? He needs her knowledge, but she holds all the cards. The answer is waiting for you in the video popping up on your screen right now. Click on it, and let's continue this journey together. We'll see you there.